Welcome to Becoming Parents. We are back for number 4 with James from Fit for Birth. There you go. How are you, James?
Yay, I'm excited. So this is now lower body. I think for all listeners who have come through, we've seen that part one was just kind of what's your goal and what's your needs? What are your pains and aches and what are we working on? Let's take a moment to look at that. Part two is let's do the assessment, which is really the most mind-blowing part. Hopefully that you get the aha moments and you can already just from that take it where you want to go. And these next three parts, midsection, lower body, and upper body, this is the lower body part. These are for you who now want to progress this level of training. You like corrective exercise, what we've talked about here. You like the idea of I want to get my breathing to work. You know, it's so common, Jen, that you go to a group exercise class and in the midst, it's fun and it's great, and we need fitness for that. And it's wonderful, but it's also assuming you have all your muscles working in the right way. And in the middle of class, when they throw out and say, make sure you breathe. Well, what most people do is they then do a breath that is their already existing dominant imbalance pattern. So
Okay.
they just reinforce the inappropriate thing. And if you don't take time to reprogram yourself, then you're just going to keep spitting out the old program. And they say that most of us, our children, they lose this ability. They watch us and they lose this ability for core breathing by the time that they are age 3. And the way to prevent your children from losing it, in part, the world is a very spiritual world. We don't know all things, right? But one thing you can do is lead by example, and leading by example means use your core breathing. So let's do one of the most basic staple exercises for me, and obviously in addition to breathing, and that is floor glute bridge. We'll start off with that. Lay on your back, and this one is actually it's kind of like easy to breathe with. It's not too big a deal. So let's just make sure you can feel glutes. Now, it's unfortunately, go ahead and basically, Jen, you can begin off, lift your butt up and then lower and then lift and lower and just tell me, are you able to feel your glute burning? It would be really great if you could.
I can feel my glutes.
Great. Now, some of you out there, just kind of keep going. There's no reason to oops. There's no reason to stop unless you get so tired that you can't keep going or something, right? So just kind of keep going. Some of you out there, instead of many of you will feel glutes, and that's wonderful. That's it, easy. We can move on from there, and we will shortly. But if you're having difficulty feeling glutes, oh, by the way, if you feel your glutes, go ahead and focus into your breathing and just kind of, why not? But Jen, as you can probably tell, it's not that challenging to get breathing here in addition to. In other words, usually breathing's pretty easy for
I love this one. This is so easy.
yeah, so yeah, exactly. So don't so really your focal point gets to be glute. How wonderful. Now, if you're not feeling glute, it's very common sometimes for people to feel lower back, hamstrings, quads, and those are imbalances. We want this to be glutes. This is an isolated glute exercise. It should be glutes. If it's not glutes, it's because your brain is used to choosing other things. So we need to fix that. If you feel it in your lower back, consider tucking your pelvis a little bit somehow. And, Jen, you can play around with it too and see how that makes your glute feel. One of the first things to do, well, that's one of the first things to do. Another first thing to do is to widen your feet. Typically, the wider your feet, the better people can feel glute at first. Now, don't mistake that for the need to eventually be able to do this also with feet closed, because you should be able to get your feet closed and feel glutes also. So don't mistake a compensation for the way to do it permanently. However, when you're starting, you want to make sure that the primary thing in an exercise is that you're using the right muscle. Once you're using the right muscle, then you make it more challenging. Now, you can also, the final piece to think about here usually is whether you want to pull your heels, your feet toward your butt or away from your butt. Some of you might have your heels tucked in underneath, and that's appropriate. Some of you, it's not appropriate. Move them further out, and vice versa. So, in other words, find the rate that's right for you. Right for you means you're able to get the right muscles. You're able to feel glute. Now, Jen, I'm guessing you've been there for a couple minutes. It feels like a nice glute burn.
Yep.
All right, excellent. Okay, we're back. So now I'm going to basically make that exercise more challenging. Lay on your back and start again. Sorry, we had frozen there for a moment, so I didn't know.
Okay. Hang on just a sec. All right.
All right. So now go ahead and lift up. Now hold there for a moment. Set number 2, let's say. It should be glute still. Do you agree, Jen, that you are basically 50% on the left side and 50% on the right?
Yep.
So now what I'd like you to do is to shift your weight so that you're 60% on one side and 40% on the other, or 70-30 or 80-20, something like that. Just do it a little bit to start. Now, are you able to feel that which side are you on, the left?
Yeah.
Do you feel that your left glute is burning more than the right?
Yes.
Perfect. Then we're in the right spot. So now we can make that. Now, some of you who don't feel that need to kind of work on that or go back to the two-legged version in the middle, the 50-50 version. For you, Jen, go ahead up and down and do 5 or 10 on the left. Now, also tell us, when I say 5 or 10 on the left, I mean, yeah, up and down just while you're loading excessively to one side. Go ahead and tell us, is this 60-40 or 80-20 or 90-10, or what do you think you're doing?
70-30 probably.
Great, 70-30. So at 70-30 in my, program for you, I would call it 70-30. And, one day, weeks from now, we could do 90-10 and 100%, like one-legged, right?
Okay.
But for those of you who want to jump to one leg already, be careful because typically it's, well, let's put it this way. As long as you feel a good glute burn, then you can do whatever, works. Typically, you get more range of motion doing it the way we're doing it right now. And of course, it's sort of like going from easier to medium to more difficult in that order. So after you do your 10 or so on the left, you've got a nice slow pace up and down, then go ahead and do your 70-30 on the right. Now, on a 0 to 10 scale with how much burn is in your glutes, what would you say you're achieving on the left glute there?
I switched to the right, but I it's a good 7, 8.
All right, great,
I can target it really, really well this way. I have to
great,
think a lot more though about breathing.
great. So you're saying you are able to think a lot more about breathing right now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you're able to continue to use your breathing while you are getting a strong glute burn.
Yeah, it's very targeted. It's really interesting, but I have to focus more, which is great.
On the right side, you're saying you have to focus more?
No, when you switch it from having it even to one side being like that 70-30, when I switch to one side being 70%, I have to focus on my breathing a little bit more.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. Yes, many of you might feel listening to this, and maybe you also, Jen, felt it, is that by shifting to one side, your core became suddenly more involved and you had to
Yeah.
kind of hold yourself up. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's do the squat. You already did this before, but we just pre-exhausted your glutes a bit. Let's see if that can be helpful. You're gonna use your breathing and try to get a little more glute on your squat. Now, you already did a fairly good job of this when we, sort of finished up our assessment. So just give us any additional feedback right out the gate. How are you doing with getting glutes now?
Much better, much better,
Great,
especially going up. And I feel like I can get a deeper squat without thinking about it.
great, great.
Okay.
Are you sitting crisscross applesauce right now? Will you do that for a moment? Just for my curiosity.
Yeah.
How's your left hip?
It's still tight, but I can get further down in crisscross applesauce.
Okay, so we are balancing your system, you're feeling it subtly. Sometimes something like that, Jen, will just disappear and it's like, oh wow, I don't even feel it anymore. So every once in a while we get lucky with something like that. But let's do one more. It's a lunge position. And this was the one that you said you had some difficulty to get into your
Yeah.
glutes. Let's give it a shot. Now, what I would suggest is this. You're going to kind of do it my way for a moment, since I know you got a lot of quads. Stay right where you are. When you come down, sort of stick your butt back a little bit more. So we've got your right leg is forward, your left leg is back,
Oh
and
my,
yeah, and now you say, "Oh my God, does that is it more in your glute or what are you feeling?"
yeah, it's a lot more in my glute.
Okay, great. So we just made the one shift that worked really well for you. So most of the time when people are feeling a quad, it couples with that form thing that many, trainers, fitness professionals will teach you, and that is be careful of how much your knee goes forward of your toe.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you a little secret about that. That is a good way to generally teach people to get glute. How's it on this side? Is it also able to get
Yeah,
glute,
oh
sticking your
yeah,
butt back?
yeah.
Okay,
It's
good.
a lot different.
Great. Just know this, at some point in life, it would be great if you also got glute, even though your knees were going forward of your toe.
Okay.
So, in other words, oftentimes we adopt things to limit us that only because we haven't learned to use the right muscles. So, did you feel you had the core breathing and the glutes kind of working okay there?
Yep. Yeah,
All right, excellent.
it was that one is one of the lunge is one of the hardest exercises for me. And it was much more difficult when I stuck my butt out and focused on that glute.
So, okay, and when you say difficult, there's two levels. One is like, okay, I'm thinking, and then the other one is I'm burning my muscles. Um, Compared to the lunge you did before, where your quads were the dominant ones, is it actually you're feeling more difficult, or which one is more difficult?
It isn't that it was more difficult to do it, it's that it was targeting my glutes so specifically this time that it was I don't know that difficult's the right word. I felt it a lot more. So, yeah, I felt it a lot more in my glute. I find lunges to feel a little clumsy for me. They're not my favorite exercise. And I also find that they don't work well. So now we know why. I mean, the breathing was the first part, but then when you just told me to stick my butt out a little bit, it was a completely different lunge. So
Yeah.
it was more challenging because it was hitting the muscle it was supposed to be hitting and I could feel it and it burned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And that's I would say that that's really a good take home message. If we end our lower body day there, then we would say that okay, you've practiced getting glutes for lower body. Great, great, great. We've done a few pieces, a few different exercises that get glutes. And then secondly, you've also practiced synchronizing a bit with the core breathing, that inner core. And if that is definitely foundation number one. And so I think this is a fine place to go. I'll say one more thing for those of you who are not doing a one-sided split squat, who want to actually step forward and step back like an alternating forward lunge, this is one of the most critical ones to incorporate your breathing into because as you sort of hit the ground as you land and then you sort of use that core breath to launch yourself back, many of you out there who are willing to do that right now as you are listening and trying that out will feel instantly so much better, like the same lunge you did before that was like definitely awkward and definitely like wow, I just don't have a lot of power springing myself back, will suddenly and magically be like, oh my gosh, this is like night and day. I am springing myself back because the the core, the entire body's decelerator, accelerator, and stabilizer. It's all the things for the whole body. And the glutes, if we've turned them on, they're the primary lower body accelerator, decelerator, and stabilizer. And so you can instantly feel cool changes just like that.
Thank you so much.
Yes, yes.